saying good morning, and some colleagues are joining from Europe. Good afternoon and good evening in Yerevan also. So I have my good colleague and friend Ashot Hovanesian, who is also part of our panel. And so far, Armine Khachatryan, she's not available. She has family emergency, but hopefully she will join a bit later. So if Ashot, you don't mind, I will start presenting myself and speaking about my part of the talk. And then after, I will hand the floor to Ashot, and Ashot will speak from his perspective on the same issues. So first, thank you very much for the Future Studios. It's really great opportunity to talk with the broader community of Armenians and those interested in Armenia, to speak about my perspective, our perspective on Armenia and the way forward with future of Armenian world, and dialogue on the way forward with the global network nation. First, about myself, some of you probably know me, but I'm David Akopyan. I've grown up in Armenia. The last 20 years of my professional life I spent with UN as international civil servant in almost 15 different countries in all possible regions in the world. As a UN staff member, I should make this disclaimer that I'm here speaking on my personal capacity and I'm not representing UN or UNDP. So whatever I say, this is my own perspective on Armenia and the way forward. And probably Future Studio, I really like the name and I really like this way formatting of this. It is great place to speak about future. And also we all understand there are numerous challenges. There's a COVID challenge, which all the countries are affected, Armenia particularly, and there's a special challenge on the border, which is like two big pressing issues for Armenians, and which we all sympathize and understand, but at the same time, the future is still ahead of us, and this is a good time to reflect on this future also. So this is probably a broader talk and will bring more opportunities to break this into specific subjects and how we take the forward. And this is a talk about Armenia and the future, or Armenians and the future, and Armenia in 21st century. Because eventually it is a difficult, challenging to give projections, ideas, how we take forward the nation for the long-term future. Because things are changing, things are like evolving very rapidly. One mutation of virus in China 6 months ago absolutely changed the world for now, and probably whatever the plans people had in many countries, they have to revisit, have to new plans. So as I said about myself, I spent 26 years now with UN, including in Armenia some years, in many different countries, and wherever I have been working, there is a special discussion about nation, way forward, the future, and I was part of these discussions, and it's always interesting to reflect on this. I was very interested when the publication came out, Armenia the Crossroad, authored by Ruben Vartanyan and None Alekian. It's really a way to set the stone and to set the discussion on this special approach to our way forward as a nation. Discussion started in pre-COVID world, but I think, and then it gets a more meaning probably now, because one of these very special features of COVID, it has many negative aspects, it's health related, economic related, etc., etc. But from one side, it brought this disruptive development aspect. So it forced people to talk and interact more virtually online, which for the concept of network nation has its own merit, because we never had this type of webinars before the COVID, and there are a number of other group discussions about Armenia in the future, which involve Armenians around the globe, which were not happening before, but now they are happening, and this is part of the new life. So working on, meaning there is a disruptive change with the labor market, disruptive change with the way the businesses are operating, disruptive change with the way the education system, health services are delivered. All these changes were slowly coming through, and suddenly with COVID, it accelerated, and many changes are like coming at much higher speed now. A couple of reflections I want to give on the publication, Armenia, the Crossroads, and the special, features as a nation they identify, that these are deep-rooted respect for knowledge, talent, ability to self-organize without a nation, this dispersed community of Armenian islands in many countries provide this bridge between nations, cross, we were serving as a bridge at a time when the world was much more disconnected, and how we can continue playing this connection role in the new world. This is a very special and interesting task for all of us. At the same time, Armenia was also one of the world centers of knowledge. Our universities, Glazor and Tatev, were established more or less the same time as Oxford or Sorbonne or Bologna University or Prague University, 11th, 12th, 13th century. So at the time when there were not that many universities, we already had. And the first phrase written in Armenian, as the book also is mentioning, to know the wisdom and instruction, all about knowledge. It's all about the respect for the talent, respect of the creativity. And maybe another also reflection from my own past, since I traveled across the Central Asia, including Afghanistan. I lived around 7-8 years in all the Central Asian countries and also Afghanistan. I lived also in many Middle Eastern countries. And wherever you go as an Armenian and introduce yourself, there's immediately, at times, sometimes I feel like we have a brand. When you say you are Armenian, meaning you are a good professional, you are recognized as a reliable person, people can trust. Sometimes I feel that it's a bit too much, but this is there. Be it Kyrgyzstan, be it Uzbekistan, be it Tajikistan, Afghanistan a bit less, but there, even in Kabul, there are remains of Armenian church from 19th century. Kashgar, you go to China, the far west of China, and suddenly you discover some remains of Armenian community which was living there. India community is well known. You go to Jerusalem, you go to Amman, Damascus, Aleppo, of course, and many other places. So wherever you go, this like being an Armenian is a door opener. It respect, it brings appreciation, all these knowledgeable professionals, architects, doctors, jewelers, etc., etc. They created a positive history which opens us to start a new way of discussing, whatever subject we want to bring to their attention. Speaking about the long-term future, when we try to project our future, like authors Ruben and Nune, they call it Armenia 2041, which is the 50 years from the establishment of the Third Republic. What type of future we are going to have? Government, I know, was working and is working on Armenia 2050, like mid-century point. Or what will be the legacy of 21st century for Armenians as the nation? We, again, long-term projections and thinking. I want to reflect about maybe there are different cases, none of them is absolutely applicable for Armenia, but there are few cases which for me are very interesting for us to consider. For example, in Europe, I feel that Switzerland and Norway are very interesting two cases. Both are not members of EU. Both are the most developed economically with the highest GDP per capita. Norway was always trying to play this important role as a peace builder, peacemaker, soft power in the world. Norway, Oslo Accord between Palestine and Israel, and many other, let's say, Norway grown up politicians which are more pro-peace and like spreading the message. Switzerland also, big sandwich between three big powers. They managed to create much more competitive economy than in France, Italy, or Germany. And so they managed to position themselves. I know also Qatar, I've been a few times in Qatar and have some discussion. They try to project themselves as soft power in Middle East in the region. Up to some point it was working, and then they have some challenges also. So, but coming back to the two countries which I know really well, and I spent a few years recently in that region also, it is Israel and Lebanon. Lebanon is very interesting really case from this network diaspora perspective. There are a bit less than 5 million people living in Lebanon, about 15 million Lebanese diaspora. I mean, president in Argentina was Lebanese, richest man in Mexico, Lebanese, and many I met in Trinidad Tobago recently. One of the most respected politicians, Minister of Justice, also Lebanese. I mean, the second generation Lebanese. They all are respected, accepted, recognized, etc. But somehow, and they all keep connections with their roots in Lebanon, but somehow it has not been translated into the capital for the nation. So Lebanon has many challenges, and somehow diaspora so far did not play this critical role in, let's say, changing the quality of life in Lebanon also. Israel comes the next, and this is the most, to me, interesting analog we have to consider. What is the common? I mean, there is something very special commonality in our history. We all lost the statehood. I mean, Israel Jews lost it much before Armenians also. So when centuries without statehood, dispersed around the world, traders, like say, facilitators, connectors, so facing our challenges, Armenia started the 20th century with the worst calamity probably of our history with the Armenian Genocide. We lost 1.5 million Armenians. And then we got Armenian Republic with 1 million or less population, and step by step started building up. Jews had their own terrible event of genocide during the Second World War, 6 million people killed. We both lost about 1/3 of the nation or a bit more. And then at the end of the century, we came with established nation, recognized, accepted, independent. And however, the realities, I mean, sometimes in 50s or 60s, both Israel and Armenia were more or less the same territory, the same economy, and the same population. Now Israel has 9 million people, has $400 billion GDP, and strong military might in the region, and let's say global positioning also as economic strong power. I mean, probably some of you know that Israel has on NASDAQ, I mean, second after the US number of listed companies from Israel and many others. And there's a very interesting book about the Israel as a startup nation. So what is how to build this startup nation, being as a nation of the entrepreneurs, businesses, the connectors, etc. Not necessarily, none of them, including Israel, is a model Armenia need to follow fully, but all give some interesting examples for our reflection also. I think there are also one important point which I wanted to mention, also the book mentioned. Armenia cannot stay in our close war, Armenian or Armenians in the world. We need to be active participants in the global affairs. And this global affairs participation, to me, there are two important dimensions. One is the humanitarian missions, and second is about the preserving the planet, which are much beyond Armenian reach only. But at the same time, what Ruben and his colleagues also initiated with Aurora Humanitarian Initiative, put ourselves as a nation into a very different league of nations who care about global human values, who care about humanity. And I think this is much appreciated wherever I had interaction on this subject. There was a lot of positive feedback. Recent decision from Gulbenkian Foundation when they decided to award this €1 million award to Greta Thunberg also, again, a contribution to global values, preserving the planet, and approach to this. Many are questioning why we have so many pressing issues in Armenia, but it's again, you cannot solve your problems only being local. You need to find a solutions. You need to position as a nation. We need to position ourselves as a nation of educated, advanced, caring about the global human values, caring about the knowledge, and caring about the planet also. And only this way we accept that recognition, which also position ourselves in that important league of well-respected nations also. I think I can stop here. We'll ask Ashot to introduce himself and then present from his perspective, because the idea was that this global concept of network global nation, we need to understand the idea, we need to define the possible model and approach, and then after we need to break this down into more specific blocks, be it education, be it research and development, startups, be it, I don't know, the health facilities, be it business facilities, be it attracting investment to Armenia, be it the knowledge or the network of the professionals all around the world, how to bring them together for the benefit of Armenia and for the benefit of diaspora. And importantly, this is not just diaspora come to help Armenia, this is a two-way process. Diaspora need Armenia, Armenia need diaspora, and we together are much better and stronger. And this is about how to form this system which makes sure that this desire to help each other comes at and benefits both sides. Ashot, please take the floor from here.
Thank you, David, for global overview and for walking through the history of Armenia. I think that was very good to hear again. I will focus on two aspects. One is the education, another is reversing migration means repatriation. I think these are two emerging issues that are so important for Armenian future. I would even like to link them together, these two aspects, because one can contribute to another one. First of all, in order to talk about repatriation, we have to know who are we dealing with. Since we are also talking about network, so I would then think that one important aspect is to create a global network of Armenian professionals, academicians, academics, business people, because I don't think that such a network, I mean real network, online network, remote network of people exists. And there are many different type of networks such as LinkedIn, Facebook, where many Armenians are part of those global networks. But I think having specific one that will just contain the people who would register, would feel that they belong to global Armenian network. Whether that would be Armenians or non-Armenians, but they would feel they are part of the global network. And that global network will have an idea behind, not just a network of people like in Facebook to click on like and say what they are eating today or drinking today, etc. I think this would be for them to show what they are capable of being useful, helpful for Armenian development. That's from one end, and I believe that this network is possible and people will be readily available for registering themselves to be part of this. And I will try to work in this area to make this happen. From what I see this as a contribution to Armenia and Armenian education. Let's talk about now other end, Armenian education. I will more talk about higher education rather than primary or secondary education. So I know that it's very difficult to make an attention of the government for investing in education because it's long term. You don't see results in 1 to 3 years. You mostly see the results in 5 to 7 years from the time that you start. So from that perspective, it is longer term, and some governments are not that much interested in making large investments into the future because they need to show to their citizens immediate results. So from that perspective, I feel that help can come from outside, from those who are professionals, academics, but they are also willing somehow to participate in improving, enhancing education in Armenia. I know that most the government attentions recently are for inviting foreign investments, especially those with Armenian origin. But as we all know, just only a small proportion of Armenians or anyone in the world are entrepreneurial. But we have much larger majority of those who are just professionals in their field, working at universities, at research labs, in many other type of NGOs, like you, David, in the UN. For example, if I take you as an example, I think you can make a great impact on Armenian education because you have vast experience in working in the UN system for so many years, working in so many countries, very difficult part of the world. And you have a lot of say to many people of international relations, politics, and other, even business, that you can do that. And I'm very confident that you will be very happy to do so. But you have to know how to do that, where are the needs, how the needs can be presented in a way that you can respond to those needs. That's where this network can work out when from one end, there is a supply of Armenian professionals registered, and the needs could be somehow produced by universities here, by other research centers, by businesses. One of my very good friends is Rafi Bagjan, who is doing such a great job in Armenia. He has a vast experience working so many years at Shell in many countries. Mm-hmm. He understands business from inside. And he is so happy to share his knowledge with so many people. For example, my company invited him to give a lecture for free. And he was doing that happily because he thought that this would be part of his contribution to his motherland. And there are many different examples of people who would take just 1 year or 1 semester off from their universities and come here and give some courses of within their competencies in Armenian universities. I know that American University is one that does this type of things, but other universities are not that much in this. I think because when I look from our internal resources in Armenia, there are so many emerging needs that I'm not positive that the government would make a very large investment into this. But now, how to attract these people to come? If you pay them the salaries that they receive in the US or other countries, it may not be sustainable because then how this cannot work. So, but I believe that we have to find a lot of volunteers, especially among those that are getting closer to their retirements, but they have accumulated knowledge and experience they can share. So they can, I think, happily move to Armenia and just contribute with certain type of privileges that government can give, low-cost privileges. For example, arrange for their accommodation. Make sure that they have provided this for free for these people that can come. And Armenia is an enjoyable place. It's a really very lovely place. I am here. Let me introduce myself. I did not do that at the beginning. I grew up in Armenia. Then I worked at some international organizations such as WHO in Denmark, in Copenhagen, then OECD in Paris, then G7 in Moscow. Then I set up my company Synergy in the US. And then after that, I opened a subsidiary in Armenia, large technical office in Armenia. And but I spent now more time in Armenia than in Washington, D.C., in Virginia. Because if I would not have business here, I could not spend this much time here. If I would not have anything that would really connect me here. So many people are moving because of the needs and requests from their daily job. I think they have to have that in order to have a fulfillment. Otherwise, I would be, even as a tourist here, would not feel myself good because I knew that I have to go back, etc. So I think the potential is there. It's a matter how we can organize it. First, spread the word about a need for networking Armenian professionals. Spread the word to all these educational universities in Armenia so that they can really think how they can benefit from people from outside of Armenia, and work with the government to ensure that they can give some benefits, some allowances, something like accommodation or anything to encourage people. They cannot afford to do more than that. But I think with the small appreciation, it would be more appreciation than real compensation. Many people are self-sufficient in foreign countries, and they will be very happy to just come and do something, contribute their time, their knowledge to Armenia. So I think that's, we try to compensate ourselves as a company to the lack of education, which was always one of the things that we were very proud of, that this country was very high in not just complete literacy, but also by numbers of their Ph.D.s, their people with higher education. And I think we have a risk now that this will go down because you cannot keep it, you cannot compete with many other institutions, because we know these are government-based education, like universities, and government cannot afford to pay salaries to those lecturers, teachers at the same level as business does. So many people go to business, like take an IT. In IT, we have excellent people in the business, but not in universities. And when we say that business has to help universities, I understand, but it's also not easy because business cannot afford to let all its employees to go and start working at the universities, because first it is responsible for this. We are doing some summer schools in the summer to bring students from universities and give them additional courses in IT, various IT disciplines, then to be able to bring them to the employment. I'm not happy doing that because it should not be my work to do so. We are just filling the gap in their education. But I would be happy to support the education system itself so that people, when they graduate, they are fully prepared to start their work at business. Maybe I would stop here because I would also like to get engaged in some discussions and maybe answer questions. So these are my contribution today.
Okay, Ashot, thank you really very much. And just Ashot was a bit modest when he was introducing himself, because when I came to know about Synergy when I was in UNDP Afghanistan, somehow I knew about Synergy and then learned about Ashot is the CEO of this company. And UNDP has already a portfolio of programs with the company. Not my, let's say, contribution, but this is their own achievement before my time. Somalia, UNDP, the same story. And then I learned recently they have, I don't know in how many African countries, established businesses. So out of nowhere, I mean, he created this transnational, globally recognized company. And I remember this very interesting article, I think it was in Wall Street Journal, about you and the company, which was quite interesting, about mysterious Armenian who created this super entity around the globe, and it delivers these superb services also. But thank you. And the way you did, I mean, you established yourself elsewhere, and then you came back to Armenia, you created employment, you contribute to education, and this is really a good example for many other businesses to consider. Maybe since Armine is not here, but there was some history with Armine, which I also had myself, which was, we were both members of Armenian International Professional Research Group. It was an association or a network of about 150 Armenians, professors, university scholars in economists, but also experts on governance, political science, public administration. So we used to organize for some years conferences about Armenia, etc. So it was interesting initiative. It evolved, and somehow it came to the end because we all move on to different subjects also. But this is one of these very examples, because there are a number of questions. Why the government is not doing this, what does the government need to do, etc. And I think we need to reflect collectively. When we speak about global network nation, what is the nation, what is the state, and how we combine these two things. We cannot expect government to do everything, but we also expect government to support the good positive initiative within the means it has. Speaking maybe in historical, again, perspective, I'm somehow trying to look the big pictures. I mean, the 20th century was the era when the empires were collapsing and the nation states are getting formed. I personally view the 21st century will be something different, which will be probably more the network nations, global nations. So there's one center, which is the nation state. And in our case, this is Armenia, where we're all connected. And there's a global network or capacity, might, resources, intellectual knowledge, etc., around the globe, and collectively how we can build this thing into much bigger, stronger entity. And there's no simple formula for this. And this is, we are probably one of the most, let's say, better start with these nations. But then the others also probably will catch up. Israel, I mentioned, the other nations also are doing here and there things. The way I look this here also, it's not that there will be one center designing super plan and there will be like one leader of nation globally and then giving instruction who is going to do what, but this is more type of smart organization network management. This is for me, and was like, there are a couple of interesting books about how to lead the smart organizations, where you don't need to have one smart leader and many executors, but you need to have everyone to be the leader. And in fact, interesting enough, Israeli army is formed on that principle. Every soldier is a leader for its own task, because the tasks are so complex, you need to be able to make the right decision, to make the right action. And how we as the nation get into this level of self-organization is an interesting question. As I mentioned, yes, we are talking about this network of professionals interested on this, how to organize this, the governance of this, the leadership of this. There will be a network of economists, and I have seen number of interactions of networks of economists talking about economy of Armenia or economy of diaspora and Armenia together. Because interesting enough, Armenia's GDP today is around $10–12 billion. But if you take the Armenians around the world GDP, at 1 million Armenians in US, on average, they have $70,000 per capita. It's about 70 billions of Armenia's GDP United States, if you take this. And if you sum up, you get to a much higher figure. So how to bring, and when parts come together, this is something much bigger. There is no, again, simple formula how to make this to happen. But different networks, I mean, networks of professionals who are interested to contribute to making better education sector in Armenia. They can come together and work with education system managers in Armenia and try to contribute. There is a way to contribute, also contributing to many other things. I mean, as I mentioned, like I am graduate of American University of Armenia, and we have about 4,000 alumni there. And we're trying to activate these 4,000 alumni half of them, probably a big part of them, are outside Armenia. But how to bring them back to connect with the content, with the substance, with engagement. And then again, in this modern world, many of us are financially self-sustained, self-independent. So we don't need financial means to do it. It is more the passion, the interest, and the way to give back something to the nation. In my case, to give also something back to American University, etc. So there are many ways people can get connected, and this is, the finances are important, but finances are not the only mean. So what will be our voice? And I'm still citizen of Armenia, so at some point, hopefully soon, we'll come back to Armenia also. We'll have my say in Armenian, let's say, election and the processes. But for now, and many diaspora Armenians also who want to contribute, I don't think we can have, there are questions on this, whether all diaspora Armenians need to get a voting right in Armenia. In this case, they probably need also to think about being taxing for Armenia's benefit, etc. So there's a complex group of questions which not necessarily are easy to answer today, but this is a collective discussion, whether we want to contribute, and many of us contribute this or the other way, helping many different parts of Armenia, but how to make it more systematic, organized, investing, helping for humanitarian cause, helping specific people for specific needs, etc. All these are part of this discussion agenda, and I hope we can continue talking on this also. Ashot, what will be your, because you are much more hands-on, on the ground, practical experience, maybe you can reflect also how this network, leadership of networks could happen in Armenia and for Armenians.
I strongly believe that it is possible to create such a network, because that will also contribute to their work even outside of Armenia. If they know right people in their field of business or teaching or any lab research, I think that this type of collaboration may help them. But also, when we are talking about this repatriation, it cannot happen in one day. Nobody is prepared to just leave everything and come and change it. This is very high level commitment. It takes years, as it took for me also years, because when I was living in Virginia, I would come just 3-4 times a year for a couple of weeks. That was maximum I could do it. But today, world is interconnected, and sometimes does not even, you say good morning, I say good evening, but besides that, nobody knows, if look at you and me, where we are located. I don't know that you are in San Francisco, you could be very well in Armenia. And since many people can continue their work while being in Armenia, still back to their business, as I am doing. My daily job is after 5 p.m. of Yerevan time, I start working with my colleagues back in Virginia, because I know it's their time. Morning time is with this, morning time is with East. I get a lot of requests and emails from the East. I mean, starting from Australia down to Armenia, because they are ahead of us. And then it goes slowly towards Europe and the US in the evening. Besides that, not only you have to turn your phone off during the night, because many people, if they don't know you are in a different time zone, may give you a call. If you find these small tricks, then you are global, you are virtual, you can be anywhere. So all this COVID and recent advancement in internet makes us much more flexible and free to move. And I believe that if you get into this, so I think rather than immediately moving, you can bring someone for a couple of weeks to make like intense courses of a subject here for like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Get engaged. This is process. One time you get engaged, already you know students here, you know other colleagues in the university here. You go back, you continue working with them, and then you come back again one more time, I think then you will be better prepared for maybe ultimate moving to Armenia. And as I said, it's not one way. It's not only that Armenia needs their help. Armenia can give back. Living in Armenia is what Armenia giving back. That's the feeling that you are in your motherland, the feeling that you are in nice people here around because they have very warm way of welcoming people, friendship and cuisine, many other things that you can enjoy. So I think it's two-way street, is win-win. If people look from that perspective, I think they give their professional knowledge and they get the quality of life in return when being in Armenia. So I think this is my understanding, but it shall start from really creating very sustainable networking. I just checked one message here, what Harut Sasunyan proposed, this high ID. I know very well Harut personally, and he's a great person, and I know that his initiative is geared towards advancing Armenia. But I believe this high ID is more on registering yourself as an Armenian. It's not necessarily a network of people in professionals. I think I'll give him a call and see if we can join our efforts in making something that will also contribute, that professionals can connect to their professionals in their fields, that they can really work both on their work overseas as well as the potential of joining their efforts for Armenia. And it's not only for by teaching. I am just bringing the education as one of the aspects, but it will also contribute to some research. Many people in universities in the States or Europe are also involved in a lot of research program. They can give some research to students here, because what students in Armenia lack mostly is the practical work. I think from what I know in IT area, then universities here are just giving them mostly theoretical knowledge on IT, but IT is not theory, IT is practice. You have to have labs, you have to have projects, not just labs. Labs is computer, nothing. But if you have a project, interesting project that are being done at the university, that can really consolidate students around those projects so that they can contribute to those projects. So a lot of research labs can cooperate. Then it will also then be going towards business. When talking about business, education in the business, I mean not just C++ or Java for, I think people here are smart enough that they can train themselves even in those subjects. But in the business, there are business subjects, sales, business development, project management, system analysis, so many other things that not easily being given at the colleges, universities. These are that a lot of practitioners, like I brought an example of Rafi. Rafi can give a great course on business, on how to do business, how to do negotiations. It's very unique. You have to find people around the world who know how to make a negotiations. Unfortunately, businesses here, there are so many startups. 20,000 in IT people are in Armenia. And they're now startups, it's another startup country, like you said, Israel. Armenia is a smaller scale, but still startup country because a lot of startups here, a lot of entrepreneurs here. I'm not sure that they know how to do negotiations, but they need an experienced people to really contribute their time and then try to fill the gaps. So I think these are also very much applicable to business, not just universities.
Thank you, Ashot. And maybe just a couple of reflections from my side also. I think what you said is indeed, I mean, the Armenia as a comfort zone, and not just for Armenians. Many of my UN colleagues, I had interaction with many of them in different places. The moment I mentioned Armenia, they said, when I was in Armenia, this was my best assignment, the most comfortable, lovely people, great food and stuff like this. So this feeling of something very good, which Armenia can offer, is left with many of them. And this is something which is there and which is part of, let's say, our comparative advantage as a nation. Our nature, beautiful, the history, the culture, the food, etc., etc. So for us as Armenians, but also for many others to come and do something good in Armenia also. Second, to me, also, I want just, you mentioned about migration back and how the, let's say, this process is going to happen or should be happening. I think a couple of reflections, and for me, it's always, I mean, I keep going to Israel and trying to see the comparison. Israel managed to move from Middle East and North Africa, almost 800,000 people in 60s and 70s to Israel. And then almost 1 million Jews left Soviet Union at the time of collapse of Soviet Union to Israel. And then despite the very differences between all these different Jews coming from different places, like say, they call it Sephardic Jews and different other Jews, etc. So they managed to amalgamate them. Still, there are differences, but they became part of the same nation. Unfortunately, in Armenia, not always this process was easy. Like when the people from Azerbaijan, Baku came to Armenia, not many stayed back in Armenia now. I don't know what is the percentage, but a significant portion of them left, because conditions were not that good enough, but also there was not enough, let's say, strategy to adopt them, accommodate them. I know when I was in Syria also, it happened that many Syrians, Armenians, decided to move to Armenia. Some stayed, but some are coming back to Syria also, because again, they were not feeling that they are easily taken in. So this is also the way where, I mean, Lebanon is facing some challenges. Armenian, they may one day decide some to move, and I know some of them are thinking about this. Iran, Armenia, some of them may decide to move to Armenia. So this is like different parts of Armenian world and different nuances. Like Armenians in United States, most probably only few, like Ashot, you will be moving back and forth or move to Armenia, and then but many of them have their own life established, and probability to move, unless you are professional and you are involved in something meaningful, is not very high. But in many other places, there will be an intention to move to Armenia, and I think there should be effort to be made to keep the door open for them, whoever wants to come to Armenia also, and to come and be part of Armenian, let's say, context and the reality also. One also more reflection, I think, to me is an important that we don't need to have a big bureaucracy, a big administration at the beginning to manage this network. I don't know, Armenian citizen, or all Armenians get Armenian citizenship, all Armenians get into election in Armenia, all Armenians have something to specifically to contribute, but this should be a bit bottom-up, step-by-step process, like business-to-business interaction, and Armenians here and Armenians there are serving as a connection point. They speak with each other the same language, they trust each other, the same way it happened like in the history. And the trade, when Armenians were facilitating on the Silk Road, partly it was because Armenians trust each other and build communities, and they connect the world different parts to each other, and they benefited as a traders, but also the nations benefited because Armenians were acting as transmitters of knowledge also. So here also, to connect back to Armenia, to make this network functioning, and not necessarily not be thousands and thousands of people coming into the network. I have very interesting example. Now my wife, Victoria, she with her woman friends, colleagues, etc., they have this Armenian International Women Association, and there's a San Francisco branch, which I observe daily. I mean, about 50, 60 women here in San Francisco Bay Area, connected with few hundred women in Armenia, empowering women, helping them to create their own businesses, helping to think differently about their life, their place in the world, etc. All these are elements, all this transformation that need to come to Armenia and to connect and to make both parts helping each other and making their quality of life as better. Because for all of us, this is the objective. I mean, to have a good quality, to contribute to something much meaningful beyond our own self and beyond our own life. And Armenian world is something which we all feel very strong and connected to. Ashot, anything more you want to say?
Yes, listen, I would like also to reflect on what you were saying. When we had some repatriants from Syria, from Iran, those who were doing business or who moved here to Armenia to transform their business into Armenian business, they got some problems because the business, how to conduct business in Armenia was very much different from how to conduct business in Iran or in Syria. That was for them a certain level of frustration or the need in adapting. But when we are talking about professionals, I think integration was much easier. I have a good examples of that. I have one colleague who recently moved from Australia, high professional, working in Australia with very high level, one of the best consulting in the world. And he's originally from Iran, Armenian from Iran. But then one day he said himself, it's time to consider for us moving to Armenia. But that would be only possible if he would find job that he could survive in Armenia. Though he understood that he would not get the same level of salary as he would get in Australia, but the salary that would be giving him comfortable life in Armenia. The cost of life in Armenia is much cheaper than in Australia or in the States. And then it was good time that it got to our attention. We convinced him and he moved with his family, 2 kids, small kids. Can you imagine such a risk of doing so for someone who feels very comfortable in his employment in Australia, in Sydney, one of the best places in the world? So, but he did. Then you have to ask yourself why he has done so. He has done not for me, he has done for himself, because he feels that he will have quality of life is not only your monetary income, it's the way that you feel your life for your kids. Because he said, I would like my kids to grow up in this country. I love this country. And before that, he visited several times. He studied at the American University at one point. So he knew what he's doing. He did not come just, That's why I'm saying you cannot repatriate in one day. You have to engage. You have to bring them. They come here, they fall in love with this country because it gives so much opportunities for making your life, as long as you get good enough income to make your life comfortable. Okay? And now he is here, he's working, he's happy. I have another one, a colleague from Oman, also did not grow up in Armenia. He grew up also in a foreign country. I think these examples, if we study, will show that there is a potential. We are not talking about virtual things. David, you are the best example. You spent most of your life outside of Armenia because of your work employment. You lived maybe in like 15 countries. Huh? Now, I believe that you would be happy also to come over, if not 12 months, but live here 6 months. Go and San Francisco, live your other 6 months there or somewhere else, wherever you like. But just share with us if that is part of your plans, and you are another good example of someone.
True. No, very true, Ashot, and I really like your examples also. I myself also, I'm approaching my UN retirement age, and I'm looking forward when I will turn the page and move back to Armenia, at least part of the time to be in Armenia. I'm talking with American University to give some lectures, either in person or through Zoom also, could be an option. And in fact, there was a comment about how to bring all these professionals in academic world to connect to Armenia, and I think Ashot was a question to you and the comment also. Well, what we can do and how we do it. It was a great, I think, idea. Maybe we can reflect and try to reactivate something around this, like Armenians around the world interested to provide their feedback, knowledge, lessons, I mean, experience, etc., to teach at universities, and not necessarily to be in person, but it could be also different modern arrangement through Zoom or through other. It needs to have a bit more reflection. So I think maybe we can take it forward as something we can together think and come back to the audience and beyond also with some ideas how we can also try to facilitate the process. I see Armine is also here.
David, it looks like Armine is connected. Maybe we can give him floor to...
Armine, can you join and take the floor? Because we have 4 minutes now left to 1 hour conversation, but I'm not sure technically whether you are able to connect and speak. She's getting there. Armine, you need to unmute yourself. Okay, great.
Can you hear
Floor
me?
is yours now. Yes, we hear you well.
Thank you, David. Thank you, organizers. I think this is a great opportunity to reconnect and to discuss issues related to the future of Armenia. Since I had this emergency in the morning, so I'll try to keep short. I'm sure you exhausted most of the issues you wanted to discuss, and I have been scanning through the questions that were sent out. Indeed, all these are pertinent questions, and we need to pull together our resources and our capabilities to build kind of better future for Armenia. But what I want to say, I'll try to be very short. So for me, it is important to put Armenia into sort of regional context, right? As a citizen of Armenia, I mean, no matter where in the world I live, where I work, my morning starts with news in Armenia. And while I'm not engaged in policy making, but the important question that very often ask myself, where are we going? Where do we want to see Armenia 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road? Will our grandchildren, great-grandchildren have motherland? These are the questions that often cross my mind, and I often come to conclude that unfortunately we, and when I say we, I don't mean specifically the government, this government or previous government, but I don't see a strategy. I don't see strategy. I don't see vision. For instance, do we want to have, what is the GDP per capita, the income level that we want our population to have 20 years down the road? I'm sure maybe there are these studies. Someone has thought about it, but it is very important. I mean, I work on many countries, and the countries that succeed, they have a vision. They know that in 20 years, for instance, they want to hit income per capita of X amount. They want to have, they want to be in top 10 exporters in specific good or service in the region. They want to have top math Olympics in high school. They want to have certain indicators in research, science, etc. And these are not just rhetoric indicators. These are indicators that result in a result of thorough analysis, and whoever is in charge, they get together and try to understand what are the shorter measures that have to be taken to achieve these indicators. And for me, as macroeconomist, as an economist, first of all, we have to kind of put at this point in time, right now, at time point T, where we stand vis-a-vis our neighbor countries, where we stand vis-a-vis former Soviet Union republics, where we stand vis-a-vis new member states, and then decide for ourselves, what is our aspiration? Do we want to be where new member states are 20 years down the road, or this is not something feasible for us? Is it something we want or we don't? We have to first decide. Then we have to have an idea of a baseline. Maybe for kind of academicians, I'm telling very simple things, but believe me, when you come to policy making, these simple things are out of mind of ministers, governors, etc. So having a baseline, which basically what will be the outcome 10 years down the road if we don't change anything, just we do things that we do today. We don't try to do major reforms. And simultaneously, we have to try to look where our peers will be in the same time horizon where we do what we do. Then I think after that, it is very important to look at risks, because risks are materializing, risks are taking place behind our control. These are exogenous. No one could predict that today we will be sitting at home and working from home and having this conversation over Zoom. I mean, I had no idea of Zoom 3 months ago, right? So there are risks, and of course we cannot predict all risks, but that's why there is a science, there are tools, there is economics, there are social studies. So having an idea of risks that we can foresee and those that we can't, but we can assign a probability, we can develop scenarios. Where will be our country, our budget, our finances, social situation, etc. If there are certain sets of risks and we have the probabilities assigned to this risk and how this will materialize. And of course, you do the same with core peers that you have around you and you have aspiration to achieve. And once you have done that, I mean, the result can be fantastic, but it can also be devastating. If 20 years down the road, we realize that to achieve, say, level of new member states per capita GDP, we are like 30 years behind. This means that we are doing, or we have been doing something terribly wrong today. I mean, without looking into numbers, because I mean, as a professional who works in international institution, I am not allowed to engage in studies of my own country. But my hunch tells me that today we are like 50, 55 years behind EU average in terms of per capita. I mean, don't quote me on the numbers because this is simply a hunch, considering similarities of other countries that I'm working with. So if we continue doing what we are doing, how far will be we as a country from that average? Do we have aspiration to converge towards new member states to Euro area, or we have other aspirations? It's okay to have other aspirations. It's okay to say we don't care about European average. We want to be where the Russian average is, or we want to be where Qatar's average is, or Middle Eastern countries. I don't know. I mean, what is more important from my perspective at this point is to understand where we want to go, what are our limitations for getting there, what are the risks, and where our neighbors will be at the point in a certain time, neighbors and peers, let's say. And I think once we have done that, we will have much better idea of what will be the tools and priority sectors and reforms that we have to push for. So, I mean, I'll stop here. I had some other things to tell about structural reforms and how we can foster the growth, but I think I'll skip it. One thing that I want to mention is that no matter what, how we proceed at this point, I think education has to be always on top of our mind, because kids that are in kindergarten today are 20 years down the road are the labor force that have to sustain economic growth in Armenia. And I'm not talking about only mental knowledge, but also social values that these kids have to carry. Who are their heroes today is what they will become tomorrow. I unfortunately don't see, again, I mean, what I continue to see, no matter it is this government or past government, it's kind of autopilot. We go some direction and politics take us somewhere, but I mean, I don't see aspirations. And I hope we will get there, I hope.
Okay, Armine, thank you really very much. I think it was great you managed to get to last minutes, and we are slightly beyond our time. I just make 1 minute concluding statement also, because exactly what you said, Future Studios is about vision for the future. To me, this is exactly the place to talk and try to formulate or crystallize the vision for the future. To me, we need to, I mean, government has an important role, but we all Armenians around the world also have our roles to try to bring this vision into, let's say, to formulate it and to try to materialize it and to try to implement it. So this is a collective effort from all of us. And I think there are a number of good questions and comments which probably we can reflect. And then in case there's an interest, maybe later we can take this into separate blocks, like what Ashot you said about education in Armenia, and some other comments were about education and the future. I think this is a critical, and how we around the world Armenians could contribute to improving quality of education in Armenia, how we can engage professionals around the world, Armenians around the world with interest to contribute to Armenia, like Armenia, our old story with AIPRG, Armenian professionals around the world may get a new life, provided there is interest around this. But there could be useful, probably try to reflect and have a bit more follow-up conversations on selected topics of our today talk. And overall, I think it's very wonderful to have this connection. I know there will be people watching also after this immediate 1 hour also. In case there are more questions or more comments, we're happy to give a later reflection on this also, and happy also to try collectively to try to see how we can take it forward also. But thank you very much to organizers, Future Studio colleagues, great opportunity. First time ever, this opportunity to talk to so many people around the world, Armenians from different fields. And Ashot and Armine, thank you. Despite your many busy schedules and family emergency, Armine, you managed to jump to the end also, appreciate it. And hopefully we will be able to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Armine. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. This was a great opportunity. Happy to join. Bye.
Absolutely.